Hello everyone, welcome back. If you have not seen Spider-Man No Way Home, don't watch the video. I'm gonna say that you should go out and see it. Don't have me spoil it for you because it is something that you should experience. However, if you really don't care or you have seen the movie and you want to hear about the real thoughts about the movie, because you need to see it in order for me to be able to talk about it. Here we are, you ready? Full spoilers, last chance. If you want to go, click off the video now because I'm about to start diving into it chronologically, I think, because there's just that much. Okay, last chance. Alright, here we go. Spider-Man No Way Home, full spoilers. One of the first massive reveals is that Daredevil is now here in the MCU. We did have Kevin Feige officially announce that Charlie Cox will be Daredevil in the MCU. He's here very briefly, but it was enough that the crowd was going, oh my god, I can't believe he's here, and I'm glad that he is. I have not talked about Daredevil on the channel, but he's fantastic. I love the Netflix series to death, all 3 seasons. Really glad that he's here and it wasn't a case of recasting or doing something different later down the line. Now, I think the best way to go about talking about it is maybe talking about the villains one at a time. Sandman is here. We see a lot more of him than I thought we were going to. He was mostly sand for a majority of the film, and I was really like, oh, I hope we see Thomas Hayden Church and actually have that connection again with the character and the actor. And we do towards the very end of the film, and I was like, yes, it was something else I needed, and it is there. When he appears in the film for the first time, he's helping Tom Spider-Man because he wasn't a villain at the end of Spider-Man 3. Another surprise that I was very happy to see. Lizard is here from the Amazing Spider-Man 1. He's redesigned. I think he looks better here in this one. Obviously he's full CG again. Sometimes the visual effects feel a little unfinished. We can get to that a little later. But Lizard here for the most part was good, serviceable. He was what you expected he would be. Jamie Foxx as Electro gets a full revamp. But when Doctor Strange's spell is casted wrong and all these villains start appearing, when he first comes to the universe, he's blue and he's reforming as he was. But the electricity is different in this universe and the way it interacts with him, and that's why it's yellow. But really, how did he get the cut? I want to know. He had that comb over and now he's got this cut. That's the real question. So he's now got that yellow electricity. They really gave the time to allow Jamie Foxx to make the character his own and add a bit more humor and levity and whatever they wanted to do with it, which was really good. We got a bit of closure with him towards the very end as well. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is really good here. He is who he's supposed to be. The always CG arms, I understand why it's done the way it is now, but the practicality I do miss. That's just because I love Spider-Man 2 so much. And Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is also here and is fantastic, and I'm going to dive into those a bit more in a sec. But all the villains and everything round up and get captured very quickly at the start of the film. Okay, yeah, there is a lot to spoil. There's a lot of movie to go. Norman doesn't get captured, but is just trying to be Norman Osborn, and I'm avoiding this half side of me that's the Goblin and walking around amongst Peter and not in a prison and shit to begin with, and I ain't buying it for a second, man. Norman is as evil as a Spider-Man villain can get. Now, despite the villains I've mentioned and what we've seen, there never actually is a Sinister Six. It's only ever 5 villains, which I thought was a little weird. You probably could have pulled another one in, but again, the movie is getting bloated enough. It's really quite an achievement on the film's part to have this many characters come in, get balanced out like they do in the Avengers films really well with screen time, and not have it lose the core and essence of what the movie was supposed to be in the first place. Now, if you've seen my non-spoiler review, I talked about how Peter has to face consequences and make sacrifices, the consequence being he loses Aunt May. Goblin kills her, and it's pretty bloody grim. This is the darkest of Tom's Spider-Man movies by far, and I don't think that Spider-Man movies have to be really dark to be enjoyable, but Peter facing consequences for the fact that he wanted to undo all this stuff, have everyone forget who he was, to not send the villains straight back to their own universe to begin with, but try to save them first because their fate is dying in their own universe. And now being loose, Aunt May is killed in the crossfire by a goblin. I love that Willem Dafoe's Goblin is vicious. It feels like we have a proper villain that Spider-Man just can't deal with. He's going toe-to-toe with him as a nightmare. I felt the echoes of how he brutalized Tobey in Spider-Man 1, beating the absolute hell out of him. That this is an adversary that's not just Electro or Sandman or part of the group, he is someone else entirely. When Aunt May died, it was trying to be a very sad moment. I didn't feel shit, honestly. Aunt May said with great power comes great responsibility, and in that moment it felt like it was all too late. But it gets swung around and fixed a little later, because now that Goblin has killed Aunt May and all the Sinister Six are on the loose, Peter has this moment of actually breaking down on his own. His friends come to find him, but they have brought someone else with them. Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are in this movie. I knew it going in, but seeing it and the crowd's visceral reaction in the cinema was just something special. So I'll take it back a little bit. Ned is somehow able to use Doctor Strange magic and opens up a portal just because he felt like he was magic or thought he was in his family bloodline. It's weird and out of nowhere. But instead of Strange bringing him through a portal, he's like, I want to find Peter Parker. He disappeared after Aunt May died and we want to know where he is. He opens a portal and we see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man lingering in the alleyway, and we are going off our heads in the cinema. Everyone just was jumping almost as he comes through the portal, and then 5 minutes later trying to find their Spider-Man again, they bring Tobey through. And there's a lot, because the worry was if they're only in the movie for 10 minutes at the end, people are going to feel cheapened out that they didn't get what they wanted to see. But if they were in the film for way too long, then they were going to overshadow the plot entirely and what the movie was supposed to be. They were going to steal the spotlight. But neither happened. They're in the film for maybe 30, 40 minutes, and it's good. It's what I wanted to see. I feel like I got the 30 minutes that I needed, and maybe 5 minutes extra. I really wanted a scene where they all sat around and talked about Uncle Ben, as well as fighting at the end together, instead of them just being brought through the portal at the very end and having to fight the Sinister Five or whatever, that they would have an actual moment to talk. And we get that. That's great. That's awesome. So let's talk about Andrew first. His style of humor and his style of Spider-Man meld very well with the MCU and the way that the humor is done there, the tone of the MCU. So the way he interacts with people comes very naturally. However, this is where I run into a bit of a problem, because Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, his whole city, New York, it's a very stylized New York. Every pedestrian has this type of weird style. All the villains, the way that whole world works, with the way Peter talks and the idea of poetry and all that. I don't want to say it's not realistic, but that's kind of what I'm trying to say. It's in its own like fantasy world. And Tobey would only say and do certain things and react a certain way. So to somehow meld that tone and style into the MCU, I was very worried with how they would do something like that. And it works 40% of the time. The other 60% of the time, the ADR voiceover in the final fight, he might be trying to swing around and fight Flint Marko or something, and he just sounds like, oh, come on, Marko, we've got to, fix you. Instead of breathing and panting and struggling to do so, it felt a little wonky. The CG for that costume felt a little wonky, because again, we're so used to seeing it practically. And then certain things he would say and the way he reacts to certain things just don't fit the character. It's close, it's very close, but it's enough that fans can nitpick it to pieces. General fans of the original trilogy will be very happy, but for the people like me that have been just born and raised on those movies and just know them so well inside and out, almost frame for frame, you can tell that it's off. Now, without me, I said the great power comes great responsibility thing doesn't work, but it works later. That's when Andrew and Tobey show up and they talk about their uncle and how he said that and how your aunt didn't die for no reason. There was a reason. Because it sets you on the path you're supposed to be on. All of this feels like we're finally getting Spider-Man, actual Spider-Man, but only at the end of 3 movies. And at the very, very end, we get there and then it's over. Or it's over for John Watts to now leave and someone else to come on to carry a new trilogy. We don't know. I'll get to that in a sec. We're still back up a bit, there's a lot more. This scene in the trailer when Zendaya is falling, Andrew Garfield does go down to catch her and save her. It's the one moment in the film I did tear up a little bit because of the way that Andrew was so viscerally like, are you okay? Are you alright? Like, you're not hurt at all. That he actually did it, that he didn't fail for a second time. You get so many emotions in about 4 seconds of a reaction, it was a lot. Otherwise, there was a part at the Statue of Liberty, this final sequence, that's where all of this is taking place, where all three of the Spider-Men jump out of the scaffolding at once and are all swinging together in tandem, and seeing it in Into the Spider-Verse was very cool, but my jaw was dropped. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of since I was 10. But it was actually happening. I just remember my jaw slowly dropping. I couldn't fathom it. I still can't. It was like I'm watching Tom fight some villains that I've seen before and this is really cool. And then Tobey would show up again in the battle and I would forget that he was even there. It was jumping so fast and so quickly. All the moments with Andrew and Tobey prior to that fight and them just talking and whatever, they felt like they went so fast, my brain could not process them. That's why I really need to see it again. And that's why I said in the non-spoiler review, it feels a little bit rushed sometimes. There's certain shots, again, this is because I'm an insane Spider-Man fan. I watched this so much, where Electro's got a hold of Garfield's Spider-Man as he's getting electrocuted. It almost feels like that scene was traced in the exact framing of Spider-Man and being electrocuted from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. When the Lizard's transformed back into Curt Connors before being sent back to his own universe, you get the sideways shot of his head and his hand falling apart. Again, it looks like they took the scene from The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and then just altered it and changed the background and everything. Or it was traced and redone to a T. There's so many little details like that throughout the whole film that I've missed heaps for sure. I need to see it again. Now, I talked about characters disappearing and not showing up for ages. Doctor Strange just kind of is taken out of the film and doesn't appear until 2 hours later at the end. It feels like that. And it was Spider-Man's doing that he was now like trapped in the mirror dimension. There's questions everywhere, like how Ned can now suddenly do all the portal stuff. When I talked about certain questions being brought up, the whole dimensions thing and what time period and different dimensions there were take place, it gets very confusing. Are you kidding me? God damn it, hang on. Okay. Whether it drops a point or goes up a point, well... I fucking hate this fly. These franchises, oh god, I'm gonna kill this fly, dude. Holy shit. So all these little details, like scenes feeling like they were even traced from the previous films, tells me that I've missed so much, that there is so much packed into this film. As it stands, I'm still sitting at an 8, whether that point jumps up or down is yet to be seen. I need to have more time with it. But now let's talk about the end of the film. All the villains have been sent back except Goblin, and Tom has had Goblin kill Aunt May, so he's just relentless. He is beating the ever-loving shit out of Goblin. Not in some huge swinging sequence and fancy visual effects, just two men standing in front of each other, and he's just punching the hell out of him. And that viciousness, as well as the way that Dafoe is reacting to how angry Parker is, really started to bring me back to Spider-Man 1. However, Tom picks up his glider and he's going to stab him, and it takes Tobey to stop that from happening, because Tobey's not going to let Tom live out that vengeance and how Tobey had the wrong man killed. But in catching the glider, Willem Dafoe turns around and stabs Tobey straight through the back. We're thinking, oh, anything great you just built, you just fucking obliterated if you have killed Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. But it's not the case. He's okay, and we don't see him much after, but we're assuming that he's okay. So it only served as one more little shock moment for people in the cinema, and it felt really cheap. I did not like it at all. You're kidding. Okay, that is the third fucking fly that I have killed trying to ruin this video. However, Goblin is stopped. We have one moment where all three of the Spider-Man hug, and it's trying to be really wholesome, and I love it, right? but I didn't feel it. Again, it might be because Tobey's Spider-Man, it felt like I didn't have Tobey's Spider-Man. It felt off. Andrew fit very well, but I struggled with Tobey. When all three of the Spider-Men were swinging in full costume and talking to one another, when I'd hear Tobey, I'd be like, is that Tobey? I hear Garfield clearly, but is it because Tobey is older? I don't know. It just wasn't working. I think John Watson, everyone that was working on this film, underestimates the power of seeing Tobey Maguire wear that mask for the first time, because it's really like a throwaway moment in the distance, him putting it on for the first time, because that imagery is so burned into people's heads. It just felt like it was a real missed opportunity. You could have had a bigger pop in showing that rather than having Tobey stabbed and seemingly killed but being okay. So both the Spider-Man, all the Sinister Six are gone, but Doctor Strange can't hold the multiverse together. So Tom has to agree to have no one remember who he is. MJ, Ned, everyone, the whole world, no one knowing he is Spider-Man, or who Peter even is. And this is where Tom's Spider-Man has to make sacrifices, because he knows that if he doesn't and keeps trying to have it his way, it's not gonna work. There is no easy escape out for him this time. In terms of sacrifices and consequences, he faces the maximum penalty. It feels like for all the times he got away with stuff in the last 3 films, he pays for it all at once. Because now, the spell is done. No one knows who he is. He goes to see MJ and Ned, who he promised he would reconnect with straight after it's all done. And he says nothing. He lets them go, and I really hope that the next director that comes on keeps it that way. That he has to live with that and not go back to that. That Tom's Spider-Man is going to have to just move on a whole new way of living. It ends with him being in an apartment and being told your rent day is on this day. He's on his own. He doesn't have an aunt or uncle. He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have a lover. He has nothing. And so we see a sewing machine, and he's making his own costume, and it's a small shot, but it meant so much and it stuck with me so much. He's in a brand new red and blue costume that we only see very briefly and I want to see more of. And now seemingly, finally, at the very end, the last frame, he is Spider-Man. But it's all too late because it's at the very end of the 3rd film. It feels like finally we got there and now it's all too late. But because this whole film feels like massive course correction, does that excuse the fact that it shouldn't have needed to have course correction to begin with? Imagine you've got 3 Batman movies, right? And in the 3rd Batman movie, they finally give you the Batmobile. Just because they finally give you the Batmobile doesn't make it all of a sudden great now, does it? Because it should have had that the whole time. That's kind of how I feel about it. It feels all a little too late now. He's got the great power of the responsibility lesson. He's made sacrifices, he's now living on his own, making his own suit, and it ends there. It is the end of an era. We finally have gotten rid of Iron Boy Jr. It's over. But post-credit scenes, they don't like to leave you with nothing. And what do we see? We see Eddie and Venom. They're sitting at a bar getting drunk, trying to understand everything that is in the MCU, because they were also brought over as well as the other villains, except they never interacted with Spider-Man. They both come to the conclusion that they should seek out Spider-Man, but like the other villains, he's then ripped back to his own universe as well. However, one piece of the symbiote is left and remaining, and the last goal that the symbiote and Brock had together was to go and seek out Spider-Man. That little piece of symbiote, it is on its way to find Peter. A 4th movie with now a great Tom Holland Spider-Man in a black suit and possibly Venom being involved. I'm down for it. I'm actually excited for it. The black suit could very easily be feeding off of how he's lost Aunt May. He has literally no one. And the symbiote, at least in the universes that it has built, it's universes now. It gets complicated. But this symbiote can talk and has a full voice and talks to Brock back and forth. That this symbiote can be Peter's only friend when he has nothing, before realizing it's a parasite. And now we've got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, so of course they could all jump over again, and when they do, that piece of the symbiote's rejected, joins back up with Brock. He now has the white logo like he should, and that little piece will also carry all the hatred and rejection that Spider-Man gave it, so that now they are together. Brock's thinking, why would you reject the symbiote? It's been nothing but nice, it's been great with me, you know, you're wrong. It's enough to give them a reason to fight. It's a great 4th movie I would love to see. I think they will do something like that. I could be completely wrong. I love the way that the movie ends, with him having to rent his own place, make his own suit, and just be completely on his own. I don't know why, but that to me was almost better than seeing Toby and Andrew. That was great, but it just, that stuck with me more. And then we have a post-credit scene, which isn't a post-credit scene. It is an entire teaser trailer for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So in terms of a reaction and my thoughts on that, it looks very good. It's one of the only Marvel movies coming up I'm really excited to see, and I can't wait to talk about that with you guys too. Again, there is so much that I'm missing and not talking about. So much happens, there's so much to spoil. Again, you think all the way back, look at this Daredevil in the movie, you almost forget that it even happened. So if you want to bring up anything I missed, I'll reply to you and talk about it in the comments below. It's just spoiler city here, so go nuts. If you liked the video, consider dropping a like. If you haven't, consider subscribing, it helps me out. Thank you again for watching all the way through to the end of this spoiler discussion. It means a lot. What did you think of the decisions that were made in this film? Does it work for you? Doesn't it? Let me know. Again, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I get to see you guys next time. Bye guys.